Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking on, well, arguably the most universally charged date on the calendar, New Year's Eve. And we're asking why. Why does it hold such extraordinary power over us year after year? Because it's so much more than just a calendar flip, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. It's this global moment of mass psychological and sociological energy.
Yeah.
And if you've ever felt that particular almost dizzying blend of exhilaration, crushing social pressure, and then that quiet, heavy reflection as the seconds tick down,
Oh, yeah, that feeling.
then you instinctively understand the unique cultural gravity of this moment. Our mission today is to, really grasp the multifaceted cultural, psychological, and sociological undercurrents that transform this single night into a universally compelling global phenomenon.
So we're moving well past the simple spectacle of fireworks and midnight toasts.
Way past it. We want to get to the why.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the energy surrounding this night is unique, it's almost inescapable, and it's often, well, it's contradictory.
Deeply contradictory.
Our sources immediately highlight a core tension, a central dichotomy that really defines the whole experience of New Year's Eve.
And this tension is precisely what makes the night so potent. On one side, you have the loud, outward-facing, almost a societal requirement for celebration.
No requirement, that's a good word for it.
It is. This is the frantic, almost obligatory push toward lavish parties, the clinking of champagne flutes, and, the general need for maximum performed jollity. There's an external expectation that this night must be epic.
It's the mandatory global happiness test. It really is. The fear of missing out, FOMO, amplified to a continental scale. And it feels like it's driven entirely by these external expectations you see on social media and movies.
Everywhere, exactly. But then, juxtaposed against that raucous societal push is an equally powerful, though often quiet, pull toward private introspection.
The internal experience.
The internal experience. You are suddenly acutely aware of the passage of time. The clock forces this internal reckoning, and you find yourself conducting this involuntary annual review of the self.
Right. Taking stock of the last 365 days. The missteps, the ambitious projects left unresolved, the personal triumphs that felt maybe too small at the time.
And this private audit is happening simultaneously with the party noise. That's the key.
That distinction, the frantic external pressure versus the powerful, almost melancholic internal evaluation, that feels like the key to understanding the stress of the day. But I have to ask, where do we even position this night? I mean, in the calendar. It's not truly part of the year past, but it hasn't fully become the year future either. It's just hanging there.
It exists in an in-between state. And that's where the concept of the liminal space becomes, I think, the foundational concept for this entire deep dive.
Liminal space.
Liminality, it's a term rooted in anthropology, and it refers to a transitional phase, a threshold where you are neither here nor there. Think of it like a waiting room between two defined states.
So New Year's Eve is the ultimate temporal liminal space. We're all just standing on the threshold, caught between the year that was, which we can no longer change, and the year that is yet to be, which we are absolutely desperate to influence.
Precisely. And that ambiguity, that state of temporal flux, is what charges the moment with such immense psychological and spiritual energy. When we are betwixt and between, as the anthropologists say, all the rules feel temporarily suspended.
Right.
The past feels both immediate and irretrievably lost, and the future feels infinitely malleable. This ambiguity is what makes the night so ripe for both anxiety, because of the past, and immense hope, because of the future.
The very ground beneath our feet, chronologically speaking, feels uncertain for those few hours.
It's the moment when the timeline becomes soft and pliable, which allows us to project all our desires and fears right onto it.
And this sense of universal change and shared anticipation, it naturally leads us to the crowds, to the countdown.
Right. If the night itself is liminal, let's look at the incredible global coordination of the countdown. It feels like the definitive communal moment of the modern era. It connects people across time zones and continents.
It absolutely does. And this brings us right into the realm of sociology, specifically Emile Durkheim's concept of collective effervescence.
Oh, yes. This concept is perhaps the ultimate sociological lens through which to view the global countdown phenomenon. Durkheim described it as a spontaneous, massive surge of shared emotion. That occurs when a community comes together and participates in the same action at the same time.
And that action, because it's so perfectly synchronized, generates a shared emotional experience so powerful it actually transcends the individual.
Yes. Think about it. Standing shoulder to shoulder with hundreds of thousands of strangers, all watching the same ball drop in Times Square. The intensity of the feeling, the thrill, the hope, the temporary sense of universal kinship. It's amplified exponentially because everyone around you is feeling it too.
It momentarily creates a unified, ecstatic social consciousness.
That's the term, yes.
But let me introduce some friction here because I'm thinking about this. We're talking about a concept developed, what, over a century ago? When people gathered in religious rituals or, physical tribal ceremonies, how can a sociological theory about intense physical gathering apply when millions of people are just watching a countdown on a quiet TV screen at home?
That's a great question.
Maybe in different time zones even.
Mhm.
Isn't this just a fancy way of describing peer pressure and maybe some heavy drinking?
It's a valid critical question.
Yeah.
And the difference, I think, lies in the shared focus and the synchronization. While the physical proximity might be absent for many, the psychological synchronization remains absolute.
Okay.
Whether you are in Times Square or watching the Sydney broadcast from your couch in London, you are consciously participating in the exact same symbolic act of temporal transition as billions of others. The moment the clock strikes zero is a culturally sacred moment, globally. And the knowledge of that mass participation generates the effervescence.
So the effervescence doesn't require physical contact. It requires shared consciousness of a monumental, synchronized event.
Precisely. That synchronicity, the simultaneous recognition of the shift, is the fuel. It creates a shared, powerful feeling of communal destiny and renewal. You feel part of something massive, something universally understood, even if you are totally solitary.
It's amazing.
This simple act of counting down, shouting the final number, and toasting is an affirmation of our shared journey through time. It's a temporary neurological and emotional override where the social becomes primary.
That leads back perfectly to the contrast you drew at the start. Even within this massive collective euphoria, this collective effervescence, each individual is simultaneously doing something profoundly internal.
Yes.
The energy is shared, but the rumination is uniquely individual.
And this tension is critical. While you are sharing this moment with all of humanity, a tiny parallel process is running in your mind almost involuntarily. Did I waste the last year? What am I missing out on? What could I have done differently?
Right.
Each person is ruminating on their own unique private timeline, their unique set of triumphs and regrets, even while they are shoulder to shoulder with the crowd. The noise of the party is just loud enough to drown out the internal accountant, but only just.
That's the ultimate demonstration of human duality, isn't it? We are social creatures craving shared, synchronized experience, but we're also fundamentally solitary in our internal accounting. And that, I think, is what feeds the famous New Year's Eve pressure cooker effect.
Absolutely. The pressure cooker isn't just about fun. It's about signaling success and alignment with the collective emotional peak. If you know this is a massive, globally acknowledged, intensely meaningful transition point,
Then you feel you have to do something big.
there's an immediate societal decree that your personal marking of it must live up to that collective significance.
It's the anxiety of not performing the milestone correctly. If the whole world is reaching a crescendo of joy and expectation, and you are quietly sitting on your couch, you feel that acute social pressure, that fear of failing at festivity.
Failing at festivity. I love that phrase.
The pressure is the gap between your internal reality and the external ideal.
And this anxiety is deeply rooted in our acute awareness of the passage of time. The recognition that time, once past, is irretrievable. As the sources note, this is the ultimate demarcation point. To ignore it, or to mark it inadequately, feels almost like disrespecting the gravity of time itself.
Wow.
Therefore, the choice of how to celebrate becomes a marker of one's engagement with life itself. We channel that generalized fear into concrete, observable action. We buy tickets, we plan the perfect evening, we must have the best night.
So the societal pressure to party is actually a reflection of our deep individual anxiety about lost time, channeled through an act of collective effervescence.
Exactly.
And that desire to channel anxiety and hope into tangible actions is precisely what gave rise to all these global traditions, which are, at their core, attempts at sympathetic magic.
Yes. Sympathetic magic. This is a crucial anthropological concept to understand New Year's traditions. We move from passively waiting for midnight to actively attempting to influence future fortune.
Like acting it out.
What's fascinating here is that these rituals serve as an immediate, concrete mechanism for hope and control in a moment that's defined by flux and uncertainty, that liminal space we talked about.
We're acting out the future we desire, hoping that the physical act will magically compel the desired result. Let's look at some of these fantastic rituals because they show us exactly what different cultures value most.
We can start with the West, and traditions focused on immediate, future-gazing optimism. The Spanish tradition of the 12 grapes is perhaps the most visceral.
The frantic, slightly comical race against the clock. Detail the mechanics for us. I love this one.
Okay, so at midnight, as the clock chimes 12 times, you must consume exactly one grape on each chime. It's incredibly fast. And successfully consuming all 12 grapes, which represent the 12 months of the year, is believed to secure 12 months of prosperity, fortune, and good luck.
It sounds incredibly difficult to do gracefully. Our sources suggest that in Spain, many people actually buy their grapes pre-peeled and seeded just to speed up the process.
They do.
It's a logistical challenge turned into a national ritual.
It is. And that challenge is key. The act itself is a physical test of quickness, focus, and timing. That momentary frenzy embodies the struggle, the effort, and the hustle required to achieve prosperity over the next year.
So you're actively performing your effort. It's a mini microcosm of the year ahead.
It is. And failure to finish is seen as predicting bad luck for the corresponding month of the failure. So if you fumble on the third grape, March is looking tricky. The stakes are profoundly high, even if the act is, slightly absurd.
But if we look at that frantic individual effort in Spain, we can contrast it with a different kind of communal foundational ritual in Scotland. Hogmanay and the tradition of first footing. This shifts the focus from securing individual speed to securing the household's safety.
First footing is a beautiful, deeply rooted custom that centers on securing basic foundational well-being for the entire household. The belief is that the first person to cross the threshold after midnight, the first footer, will dictate the family's luck for the year ahead.
And the sources emphasize that the characteristics of this first footer matter. Traditionally, a tall, dark-haired male stranger was preferred.
Right, which some historians believe is a symbolic reversal of the fear of fair-haired Viking invaders. A dark-haired stranger meant safety, not a raid.
That's fascinating. But their hands are never empty. They must bring very specific, symbolic gifts.
Yes, and this is where the sympathetic magic becomes extraordinarily clear. The required gifts speak to fundamental primal human needs, reflecting a historical anxiety about survival and scarcity. The first essential gift is coal.
Coal, for warmth, simple as that.
Exactly. It symbolizes protection against the cold and hardship, ensuring the hearth remains burning. It represents security and basic physical comfort. The second is bread, usually a shortbread or a similar plain loaf.
For food, sustenance.
This represents food, ensuring the family will not go hungry, and the third is whiskey.
For good cheer.
For good cheer and prosperity, guaranteeing celebration and warmth of spirit.
That's such a powerful, grounded trio. It's not about winning the lottery or achieving fame. It's about securing the absolute basics for survival and contentment. Warmth, sustenance, and happiness. It grounds the entire ritual, prioritizing physical and emotional security over abstract, transient wealth.
It does. The symbolism is crystal clear. We are actively welcoming in the absolute necessities of a good, safe life. It's an act of hopeful hospitality, hoping the new year is as generous and warm as the gifts brought across the threshold. The entire community is focused on ensuring stable, basic needs are met.
Okay, now let's cross the globe entirely and look eastward. If the West is focused on this loud, active future-gazing, Japan's Umisoka, their New Year's Eve, takes an entirely different approach. It's serene, spiritual, and focused on cleansing the past.
And this contrast is essential for grasping the global anatomy of NYE. In many Western traditions, the energy is outward and focused on maximizing future luck. In Japan, the energy is inward, contemplative, and focused on achieving purification before the transition.
The first step in that is the tradition known as soji, the great deep cleaning of the house. This is more than just spring cleaning. It's an institutionalized spiritual overhaul.
It is purification at the highest level. I mean, we might clean before a party, but this is different. The deep cleaning serves a profound spiritual purpose. It's about clearing out the dust, the clutter, and the spiritual residue of the old year.
Spiritual residue, I like that.
Symbolically, you are physically removing the past year's bad energy, preparing the space to welcome the Toshigami, the New Year's deities, into a pristine, receptive environment. It's a literal and metaphorical making of space for grace and fortune.
So you're not inviting luck by performing a frantic physical feat like eating grapes. You're earning fortune by purifying the very vessel of your life, your home.
Yeah.
And then, as midnight approaches, there is the incredible spiritual culmination. Joya no Kane, the ringing of the temple bells.
This is a powerful, non-negotiable moment of profound reflection and sonic cleansing. The temple bells are rung 108 times, And that specific number, 108, is the crucial detail.
Help us connect the dots here. Why 108?
It's tied directly to Buddhist belief. The 108 ringings are a symbolic, systematic cleansing of the soul, specifically designed to dispel the 108 earthly temptations or afflictions, known as kleshas.
Let's scrutinize that a bit. The West is concerned with warmth and sustenance. What exactly are the 108 kleshas? Can you give us some concrete examples of what the bell ringing is purifying?
Sure. The kleshas are essentially mental states that cloud the mind and manifest as unwholesome actions. They are typically categorized, but they fundamentally include primal human flaws like greed, hatred, and delusion.
The big ones.
The big ones. But more specific examples would include things like attachment, jealousy, arrogance, excessive pride, stubbornness, ignorance. You get the idea. By ringing the bell 108 times, once for each temptation, you are actively, symbolically shedding the accumulated spiritual baggage of the entire past year.
Wow. So you're not just celebrating the future, you're actively performing a massive act of moral and spiritual purification to start the year with a clean internal ledger. The contrast in priority is absolutely stark.
It really is. The Western traditions are often proactive attempts to grab prosperity, often with a sense of frantic urgency. The Eastern traditions are reactive attempts to scrub away accumulated impurities before accepting the new year in a state of calm readiness.
So what does this all mean when we put these traditions side by side? We see the loud, immediate, future-focused optimism, eating grapes frantically, securing gifts of sustenance, versus the quiet, contemplative, past-cleansing reflection, purifying the house and the soul through 108 bells.
Well, the common thread, spent the opposite methodologies, remains the powerful human desire for a tabula rasa, a blank slate.
Right.
Whether we achieve it by actively inviting luck in or by spiritually erasing past failings, the impulse is the same: to start fresh, unburdened by the previous year's mistakes or perceived failures.
The difference just lies in where the perceived threat to happiness originates. Is it external forces like bad luck or internal flaws like sin?
That's a great way to put it.
And this universal desire for a fresh start, the clean slate, inevitably leads us to the most common and often most frustrating ritual of the new year: the resolution, the grand, rigid declaration of self-improvement that usually fizzles out by the second week of January.
The annual ritual of ambitious self-deception.
Yes.
But we have to acknowledge that the impetus behind resolutions is absolutely genuine. It stems directly from that powerful tabula rasa feeling, that innate human desire for self-betterment. It's an impulse we should honor.
We feel the surge of motivational energy that comes with a major temporal milestone. The calendar flips, and we genuinely believe that the new year, new me mentality can sustain itself through sheer willpower.
We do. The motivation is real, but the methodology is usually disastrous, especially when we use New Year's Day as the start line. This is where we run straight into the goal-setting fallacy, which is central to why resolutions fail.
Okay, let's define this fallacy clearly, because this is where you, our listener, can gain the most practical insight. What defines the goal-setting fallacy in this context?
It is the fixation on a dramatic, rigid, measurable outcome, the destination, without establishing the required underlying systems and habits, the route.
The route, okay.
We declare, I will lose 20 kilos, or I will write a novel this year. These are magnificent outcomes, but they are not daily, sustainable, actionable behaviors. They are aspirations treated as rigid, immediate demands, ignoring the months of daily behavior change required to achieve them.
So the fixation is entirely on the result, the 20 kilos lost, and not the process, the system of regular exercise and mindful eating. And because the process requires effort and consistency and time, resolutions collapse almost immediately.
Exactly. And this leads directly to the core flaw: the all-or-nothing mindset. Resolutions are constructed with extreme, brittle rigidity. They are success or failure, pass or fail.
The moment human fallibility kicks in, and it will kick in, because we are navigating complex, stressful lives, the whole structure just collapses. It's the infamous collapse event.
The collapse event is inevitable. You're stressed, you had a late night, and you eat a slice of cake. The thought process is swift and toxic. Well, a diet is ruined now. I failed the resolution. Might as well wait until next New Year's to try again.
It's so true. Or you miss one day of writing, and it's like, the novel is dead in the water. I'm not a serious writer.
That's it.
The resolution becomes a rigid pass-fail test that guarantees an inevitable sense of failure. And because we invested so much emotional energy into that symbolic fresh start, the resulting disappointment is amplified, leading to the complete abandonment of the goal rather than a simple, sustainable correction, of course.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy of disappointment built right into the structure of the goal itself.
It undermines the very impulse for self-betterment we started with.
It does. The resolution, in its classic form, is inherently demotivating because it sets the bar at an unsustainable height without providing any of the infrastructure to reach it.
So this is the critical juncture for the listener. How can we harness that powerful energy of renewal, that genuine desire for a fresh start, without falling into this predictable trap of the failed, rigid resolution?
We need a profound shift in perspective. We have to move from destination to direction. We must advocate for a gentler, more flexible, and ultimately more effective approach, replacing rigid resolutions with broader intentions or themes for the year.
Let's break down that difference using concrete examples and practical psychological advice, because this distinction is critical for making change stick. Give me the typical resolution example first.
Okay, the classic resolution is, I will go to the gym 5 times a week. This is rigid, immediately measurable, and fixated on a high destination. It creates 5 hurdles every single week, and missing one feels like immediate failure. It also relies heavily on external motivation, which is fleeting.
Okay. Now contrast that with the intention or theme.
The intention is, I will be more attentive to my physical well-being. See the difference? This is flexible, it's direction-focused, and it's based on internal values. It asks, what kind of person do I want to be? I want to be a person who is attentive to my well-being.
I see the immediate benefit in the face of the inevitable collapse event. If you miss the gym because of a family emergency, the entire intention isn't ruined.
Not at all.
A long walk aligns with the intention. Choosing the stairs instead of the elevator aligns with the intention. Cooking a healthy dinner aligns with the intention. These are small, mindful choices that move you in the right direction, reinforcing an identity.
That identity focus is key. We are shifting from, I want to achieve a result, to, I want to become a certain kind of person. This allows for flexibility and, well, for life. It reframes the entire year. It's no longer a series of impossible hurdles leading to a destination you might miss, but a path of mindful choices where every small victory counts toward the theme.
And we can make this shift even more effective by applying the concept of what psychologists call implementation intentions, but without using the heavy jargon. It's the if-then planning model.
An excellent practical tool.
Yeah.
So instead of declaring a rigid goal, I will be healthier, you connect the intention to a specific system. For example, I intend to be more attentive to my well-being. If I finish dinner, then I will immediately put on my walking shoes for a 20-minute walk.
That's so specific.
And that specificity preloads the decision. It removes the mental exhaustion of deciding in the moment, bypassing the willpower failure point.
It creates a sustainable system around a flexible intention. And crucially, it removes that crushing sense of failure. If your intention is simply to be more mindful of your well-being, the goal becomes the journey itself, not a binary pass-fail result achieved only by December 31st.
You are always successful if you are attempting to align your choices with the theme. The focus shifts from the dramatic outcome to the sustainable system, honoring that genuine impulse for self-betterment, but setting up the individual for success, not guaranteed disappointment.
It's harnessing the tabula rasa concept correctly. You're turning the blank slate into a sustainable field to cultivate, not a fixed target to hit.
That's a perfect analogy.
This all ties back beautifully to the concept of authentic celebration that we introduced early on. If we are replacing rigid resolutions with flexible intentions, maybe we should also replace the rigid ideal of the epic party with authentic celebration.
Absolutely. As people gain experience and maturity, they often realize that the appeal of a quiet, reflective, intentional New Year's Eve far outweighs the exhausting nature of manufactured jollity.
Manufactured jollity.
Yes, or conforming to an external, impossible ideal of celebration.
That manufactured jollity is often just another extension of societal pressure, isn't it? Demanding you perform happiness and success at a specific moment, regardless of how you genuinely feel internally.
Exactly. Authentic celebration means marking the transition in a way that feels genuinely valuable to the individual. For some, yes, that might be a huge party if they genuinely love dancing. But for others, authenticity means a long, reflective walk in the cold air, cooking a meaningful, special meal at home, having a deep conversation with a loved one.
Or simply reading a book and being in bed by 11:30 p.m.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's about reclaiming the moment. You are defining and welcoming the new year on your own terms.
That act of personal agency, defining the milestone for yourself, provides genuine comfort and hope, precisely because it removes the anxiety, the obligation, and the frantic performance of external success.
When you welcome the new year in a quiet, mindful way, focused on intention and authenticity rather than social obligation, You harmonize the internal psychological evaluation with the external temporal transition. You bridge the gap between that intense internal stock-taking and the massive public noise.
What an incredibly detailed journey through a single 24-hour period. We started by defining the intense energy of New Year's Eve as the ultimate temporal liminal space, charged with anxiety and hope.
And fueled by the overwhelming collective effervescence of the global countdown, where we feel that intense societal pressure to celebrate.
And we tracked how that pressure and hope manifest in rituals, contrasting the frantic future-gazing of the Spanish grapes, a test of speed, with the foundational needs represented by Scotland's symbolic gifts of coal, bread, and whiskey, a test of security.
We then pivoted to contrast those Western proactive traditions with the serene, past-cleansing rituals of the East, like Japan's Sosoji and the 108 temple bells, which purge the soul of specific temptations or cliches.
And this brought us squarely to the psychological trap of the goal-setting fallacy and the guaranteed failure built into rigid resolutions.
And finally, we found a path forward by advocating for the profound shift from those rigid resolutions to flexible, forgiving, and sustainable intentions or themes for the year, focusing on the system and the identity, allowing us to reclaim the New Year moment authentically and with genuine hope.
If we synthesize all this analysis, we return to a single, powerful metaphor that encompasses everything we've discussed. New Year's Eve is ultimately a mirror.
A mirror, yes. It reflects our deepest, most potent human instincts. It reflects our hopes for renewal, our anxieties about the relentless and irretrievable passage of time, and our perennial, enduring belief in the fundamental possibility of a fresh start. Whether we are frantically eating grapes, quietly cleaning our home, or waiting for the ball to drop, we are ultimately looking into that mirror, assessing the self, and hoping for a better reflection to emerge in the coming year.
That is a powerful final image to leave with. And it gives us a fantastic, provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over as you approach this annual threshold. Since the tradition of Scottish first footing dictates the luck for the family based on the bearer's specific symbolic gifts, coal for warmth, bread for sustenance, and whiskey for cheer, we must ask you to consider something slightly different for your own personal transition.
Think not about what dramatic, rigid goal you want to achieve this year, but what symbolic gift you're going to bring across the threshold into your own life on January 1st. What is the symbolic intention, the theme, the new sustainable habit, the mindset that represents the foundational well-being you most require?
Are you bringing the coal of sustained, consistent effort? The bread of nurturing your core relationships and community? Or perhaps the whiskey of unburdened cheer and authentic presence? It's a profound way to welcome the new year on your own terms, focusing on the systems that support a better you. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the cultural anatomy of the year's final, most charged night.
We hope this analysis provides you with a fresh perspective, turning a night of obligation into a moment of intentionality. Until next time, take care. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're moving past the noisy peak, the champagne corks and the whole confetti storm of New Year's Eve. We are diving into what happens in that sudden echoing quiet that comes right after the big celebration.
Right, the what now moment.
Exactly. We're investigating the psychological vacuum of New Year's Day and how you can capture that elusive spark of motivation, and I think this is the key, make it actually stick beyond the middle of January.
It's a fascinating area of behavioral science, and it gets at something so deeply human. Our sources today really move beyond the spectacle, that almost mandatory emotional high of New Year's Eve.
Right.
And they ask a more fundamental question. What makes January 1st feel so unique? And how do we translate that really intense but, let's be honest, fleeting feeling into sustained, actual daily action?
So what's our mission for this deep dive?
Our mission is to take a hard look at the science behind what's called the fresh start effect. And then, maybe more importantly, investigate the architectural scaffolding you need to build a durable bridge from that huge macro aspiration to consistent, reliable micro action.
Okay, let's start there. Let's unpack that opening scene. Just think about the final 60 seconds before midnight.
The countdown.
The countdown.
Yeah.
There's this monumental, almost dizzying buildup. It's a genuine social and emotional peak.
Yeah, you could be watching it on TV, or you could be shoulder to shoulder in a crowd, counting down with thousands, even millions of people.
And there's this powerful shared external energy. It's a crescendo of noise and anxiety and hope. And then the clock hits 12:01.
And it just stops.
It cuts out. The whole shared engine of excitement just vanishes.
That abrupt transition is so telling because the energy, it doesn't just fade away, it just disappears instantly.
Yeah.
The noise dies down, the confetti settles, and that collective focus just shatters. You're immediately, thrown right back into your own individual consciousness.
Standing there in the very first cold moments of a year, you just very loudly welcomed in.
And what takes over in that moment is this really profound anticlimax.
A sense of sudden, echoing silence. And it's amplified because the whole world is basically doing the same thing. You're just left there, maybe with some glitter in your hair, a tired smile, and you're just facing this immense, unstructured, blank canvas of the year ahead. What's the psychological impact of that? Of that sudden dissipation of shared excitement?
Well, for a lot of people, it registers as a feeling of slight disorientation, a kind of emotional jet lag.
I like that. Emotional jet lag.
The communal catharsis of the countdown, that massive release of collective tension, it gives way to a very quiet, often lethargic sense of what now?
You've done the ritual. The party's over.
The party's over. And now you have to face the immense effort of actually filling in that blank canvas. The energy that fueled the countdown was external, but the work of the year, that's all internal.
And that what now feeling is, I think, fundamentally shaped by the environment of New Year's Day itself.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just another day off work. Our sources really emphasize that January 1st is defined by this unique and pervasive stillness.
The streets are empty.
So empty. Businesses are closed or they're on limited hours. There is this collective, unspoken agreement that the world will just slow down.
It's like the world is collectively nursing a hangover. And that's both literal for some and metaphorical for society as a whole. It's like we're recuperating from the massive energy spend of the holiday season.
Exactly. So we have to see New Year's Day as what the sources call a liminal day.
A threshold space.
A threshold. A suspended space between the exhausted, closed chapter of the past and the unwritten, not yet started future.
And you have to think critically about the psychological impact of that stillness. I mean, if you tried to make a major life change on say, a high-stress Tuesday afternoon with all the regular chaos of life.
Deadlines, kids' schedules, emails.
Right. The world's noise and friction would just immediately drown out your intention. There's no space for it.
But isn't that a fragile foundation? I mean, if the stillness only lasts for a day, how is that really helping me sustain anything? By January 2nd, the noise is back.
That's the essential challenge, you're right. And it's why the stillness itself isn't the solution, but it's the catalyst.
Okay.
That vacuum created by the stillness, it becomes psychologically potent because it provides the necessary low-friction space for your intentions to take root without immediate competition.
So it's like a temporary state of grace.
It is. It creates the perfect cognitive environment for the phenomenon we're really focusing on today, the fresh start effect.
And this is where we get into the actual verifiable science of it all. We're talking about the influential work of behavioral scientist Catherine Milkman and her colleagues.
We are.
The fresh start effect, or FSE, is more than just, wishing things were better. It's a scientifically measurable psychological mechanism.
It is. The research is incredibly clear on this. The FSE describes the observation that people are reliably more motivated to pursue their goals right after these specific, predictable psychological markers.
So it's not magic. It's not destiny.
No, it's about strategic cognitive partitioning. And it's a universal human trait.
Okay, let's nail down what those markers are because they're essential to triggering the FSE. The researchers call them temporal landmarks.
Right.
What exactly defines a temporal landmark? How is it different from just another Tuesday?
Temporal landmarks are, simply put, dates that naturally stand out from the normal repetitive flow of time.
The daily grind.
The daily grind. They're moments that break up the ongoing seamless narrative of our lives. They give us a clear point of punctuation. There are these socially constructed dates that carry a specific psychological weight.
So if you imagine your life as a long, smooth river, these landmarks are the points where the river hits a big bend or a waterfall. It clearly marks one section from the next.
That's a beautiful analogy, and it holds up perfectly. Examples are, your birthday, the first day of a new month, the start of a new season.
Like the school year.
The academic year, exactly. Or the ultimate, most widely shared and synchronous landmark, New Year's Day. These dates just carry a weight that, say, the second of the month simply doesn't have.
Let's get to the mechanics then. How does this actually work in your brain? How do these landmarks function as a psychological reboot for you, the listener?
They work by allowing you to mentally partition your life into these discrete, manageable chapters.
Okay.
Without these landmarks, life is just one continuous, relentless flow. And that means every mistake you made 10 minutes ago or yesterday or last year is immediately present and relevant today.
And that burden of past failure, of constantly beating yourself up, that has to be incredibly heavy, almost paralyzing.
It is. And we can quantify the psychological cost of that burden. It's
Awesome.
inertia. Studies on self-blame show that when we see our current self as just a continuation of a failure-prone past self, we enter a state of learned helplessness.
So why bother trying to start running today if I just constantly remind myself that I tried and failed every month last year?
Exactly. The accumulated guilt of that past self acts as this powerful brake on any present action.
That sounds completely exhausting.
Yeah.
You're dragging the weight of the self who procrastinated, who didn't exercise, right into the moment you need the most motivation.
Precisely. But the temporal landmark gives us the cognitive mechanism to effectively shut that down. It's a very self-serving mental trick, and it's a good one.
How does it work?
It creates two distinct narrative selves. There's the past self who failed or struggled and who is now safely contained in a closed chapter
In the box.
in the box. And then there's the new, improved future self who is clean, competent, and about to succeed. The FSC, therefore, grants you a mental clean slate by facilitating this identity shift.
It's an act of mental self-forgiveness. It's compartmentalization, and it's validated by the calendar date.
Right.
The imperfections of the old year suddenly belong to a closed script. They're filed away. They're no longer relevant to the current character arc. January 1st genuinely feels like the first page of a new book because our brains give us permission for it to be.
And that permission is highly effective because it directly tackles the core psychological problem of motivation, which is the belief that change is even possible. The FSE provides a burst of self-efficacy,
The belief that this time,
that this time the outcome can and will be different because the protagonist you is fundamentally new.
we have all felt that surge, that intense internal dialogue
Yeah.
on January 1st where you think, I am a new person. This year, things will be different. It's not just a hopeful phrase. This heightened motivation is measurable, and it's absolutely real.
It is. The initial activation energy you need to start a new behavior is temporarily lowered because your self-doubt is suppressed. Milkman's studies show that people are significantly more likely to initiate goal-directed behaviors right after a temporal landmark than in the days right before or after it.
Can you give us a sense of the scale or some specific examples from the research?
Sure. One study tracked activity on university gym websites, and they found these sharp spikes in signups and attendance right after major landmarks, like the beginning of a semester or even just the start of a new week.
So even a Monday has a little bit of this power.
A little bit, yes. And similarly, they observed these measurable spikes in Google searches for terms like diet, start new business, or how to save money right on January 1st or the first of a new month compared to any random date.
The commitment is demonstrably heightened. The intent is real.
The intent is absolutely real.
Okay, so we have this scientifically proven push. The world is temporarily quiet, our past failures are boxed up, and our motivation is surging. It sounds like the perfect formula for lasting success.
It does.
So why do gyms empty out so reliably by February?
And there it is, the central paradox. This leads us directly into the heart of our next section. While the fresh start effect is powerful and it provides that crucial initial acceleration, its efficacy is notoriously short-lived.
Right.
That initial momentum faces a, frankly, catastrophic rapid rate of attrition. You could call it the motivational decay rate.
This is the problem everyone has experienced, and it is so frustrating. You start strong, you buy the new apps, you clear out the pantry,
You set up the savings account.
and then 2 or 3 weeks later, you look around, and you are exactly where you started, but you feel worse because you failed again.
Why does the pristine hope of January 1st so quickly succumb to the messy reality of mid-January? Why the January 17th problem?
It's because of two interconnected, fundamental psychological miscalculations that we all make when we start out, fueled purely by that motivation.
What's the first one? First, we drastically overestimate the enduring power and the resilience of our new self, that clean slate identity. We assume the high is going to last forever.
Okay. And the second miscalculation.
Second, and this is the most critical part, we fail to recognize the profound structural resistance from the systems we already have in place. We underestimate the sheer gravitational pull of our old, efficient, entrenched habits.
That concept of gravitational pull is so much stronger than people realize.
Mm.
I think we tend to think of habits as conscious choices we make, but they're not. They're invisible, systemic, automatic forces.
They're behavioral physics.
Behavioral physics.
They are. And understanding the physical process in the brain really helps demystify the failure. Your brain is a fundamentally lazy organ. It's designed for efficiency and energy
It
conservation.
wants the easy path.
Always.
Yeah.
Every time you perform a routine, grabbing your phone first thing in the morning, hitting snooze, driving the same route to work, you reinforce a neural pathway. Over time, these pathways become deeply entrenched trenches.
And we call those trenches habits. Can you elaborate on the neurology of that gravitational pull? How does the brain prioritize the old behavior over the new one?
The primary reason is a process called myelination. When you do a habit repeatedly, the neural pathway for that action gets wrapped in a fatty, insulating sheath called myelin.
So like the rubber coating on an electrical wire.
A perfect analogy. Myelinated neurons transmit signals incredibly fast and efficiently. The old behavior reaching for the snack, avoiding the gym, is automatic because its pathway is highly myelinated. It's a superhighway.
So the fresh start gives us this massive initial propulsion, like a rocket blast lifting us out of Earth's gravity.
Yes, but the new habit you're trying to start, the 5 a.m. run, the mindful reading, it has to travel along a path that is currently unmyelinated.
A dirt road.
Dirt road through a jungle. The electrical signal is slow, weak, and inefficient. So the brain naturally avoids the slow, effortful path and defaults back to the fast, easy, myelinated superhighway.
And if that initial FSE fuel, the euphoria, the novelty, if that runs out too quickly.
The gravitational pull of the old, efficient neural pathways is still there. It's massive, it's unavoidable, and it's ready to drag you right back down into the deepest, most efficient trench.
So the temporal landmark gives us the desire for change, but it doesn't give us the capacity to overcome the inertia.
That's a great way to put it.
It sounds like relying purely on that internal motivational feeling is a fundamentally flawed short-term strategy.
It is, because it completely ignores the reality of willpower itself. And this is another key insight from our sources. We often treat willpower as some kind of inexhaustible moral trait, a character strength.
Right. I just don't have enough willpower.
The research suggests the opposite. Willpower is a finite, depletable resource. It's often compared to a muscle that gets tired, or even more simply, like a tank of gas that just runs low.
So if the FSC gives me a full tank on January 1st, what's happened by January 10th? That's the psychological cost of using that willpower.
The cost is measured in things like decision fatigue and ego depletion. Every single choice you make, what to wear, what to eat, answering emails, dealing with stress, it all draws from that same finite pool of mental energy.
Okay.
When the FSE motivation is high, you can afford to spend that energy fighting the gravity of old habits. But by mid-January, when work stress is back, sleep is irregular, and you've made 100 decisions before noon, your willpower tank is running on fumes.
And when the tank is low, the brain just automatically reverts to the path of least resistance.
The old myelinated habit.
The gap between your intention and your environment suddenly becomes this gaping chasm where the resolution just dies.
Precisely. The individual might wake up feeling like a fundamentally new person ready to conquer the world,
Yeah.
but they're still living in the same house, operating under the same stresses, and exposed to the same environmental triggers that shaped the old self they just declared defunct. The environment and the physical demands of daily life will always, always win over fragile, finite willpower in the long run.
This changes everything. It means we've been focusing on the wrong problem. The problem isn't a failure of character. It's a failure of system.
Yes.
The initial euphoria is temporary. The core environmental and neural pathways that govern our day-to-day choices. They remain completely intact, and they're constantly exerting their influence.
And that's the tragic attrition we see so reliably by mid-January. The burst of motivation is a wonderful gift, but it is not a structural change. We need to move the discussion completely from temporary motivation to permanent system building.
Which brings us to Section 3, engineering resilience. This is the crucial pivot. Shifting focus from the temporary, the fresh start effect, to the durable how you sustain the change.
Exactly. The key, as you mentioned, is building the structural support, the scaffolding that you need for when that internal engine of motivation inevitably sputters.
And if we accept that willpower is finite and unreliable, depleted by stress, poor sleep, and just making choices,
then relying on it to make high-effort decisions every single day is an act of self-sabotage. The goal of this section is automation. We have to automate the new behavior so it requires minimal conscious effort.
This is where a really powerful concept from behavioral science comes in. Implementation intentions. They sound technical, but they're the ultimate tool for constructing this scaffolding.
They are.
What are they, and how do they differ from just a standard, vague New Year's resolution?
Okay, so a standard resolution is a macro aspiration. I will exercise more this year, or I will start saving money.
Big, admirable goals.
Admirable, but they are declarations of intent without an execution plan. So when you're faced with the moment of choice, you still have to rely on willpower to decide when and where.
And we just established that willpower will always lose to the myelinated old habits when your energy is low.
Always. An implementation intention, or an 8, it bypasses this conflict entirely. It is a predetermined, concrete plan for when and where you will perform a new habit. It creates a behavioral trigger that automatically kicks off the desired action.
It's an if-then statement.
It's an if-then statement designed to remove the decision-making from the moment of action. And the research shows that using these dramatically increases your likelihood of follow-through.
The clarity is the key. You're not just setting a goal. You're setting a behavioral tripwire. Let's walk through some structured examples of what this scaffolding looks like, maybe across a few different areas of life.
Okay, let's look at 3. Financial health, physical fitness, and professional learning.
Start with financial health. A lot of resolutions are about saving more money.
Right. A standard resolution is, I will save 10% of my income. An implementation intention might be, if my paycheck arrives in my account, that's the external trigger, then I will immediately transfer 10% to my high-yield savings account before I even look at my checking balance.
Oh, that's smart.
The scaffolding there is inserting the action before the potential temptation, seeing the money and mentally spending it, and you're making the action dependent on an undeniable recurring event. You remove the decision entirely.
The friction to save becomes just a single click, and the friction to spend that money is raised because it's already gone. Okay, what about physical fitness? That's the big one that sees the January 17th crash.
The failure scenario is so often, I resolve to go to the gym after work. That requires you to fight, 5 hours of decision fatigue, a stressful commute, and the gravitational pull of your couch.
The couch always wins.
The couch always wins. So an implementation intention flips this. The plan has to be made effortless.
So what does that look like in an if-then statement?
It needs to be proactive,
Yeah.
and it needs to be tied to an existing strong habit. For example, if my work laptop shuts down for the evening, a strong existing trigger, then I will immediately put on my running shoes and walk out the door for a 15-minute run.
Just 15 minutes. A micro-action.
A micro-action. Or, even better, pre-scaffolding. If I wake up, then I put on my gym clothes first before I make coffee. This makes the clothing choice, which takes almost zero willpower, the point of no return. You are consciously engineering your environment to make the desired behavior the path of least resistance.
I love that. You've removed the big, hard decision, should I go to the gym now? And you've replaced it with a micro-action that commits you to the system. Well, I'm already dressed for the gym, so I might as well go.
Exactly. The system makes it easier to succeed than to fail. You are increasing the friction of doing the old thing, staying in your pajamas, and lowering the friction of doing the new thing. You're leveraging the natural laziness of your brain against itself.
Okay, one more. Maybe something related to learning or professional growth.
A lot of people resolve to learn a new skill or read more industry research. It's just too vague. The two needs to be tied to a predictable lull in your day. If I sit down with my lunch, a highly specific daily trigger, then I will open the relevant online course module and spend the first 10 minutes of my lunch break reviewing it. You're stacking a near, slightly effortful habit onto a rock-solid, non-negotiable existing habit, eating lunch.
The theme here is consistent. Stop relying on future motivation and start relying on present structure. You build the scaffolding before the emotional surge of the FSE even hits.
It's preemptive behavior.
Right.
But even with the best scaffolding, we have to address the critical mindset shift you need to maintain the system, because failure, or at least temporary slippage, is absolutely inevitable.
Right.
We have to inoculate ourselves against the destructive nature of the all-or-nothing mindset.
And this is where the purity of the fresh start effect can sometimes turn against us. Because we love the idea of that pristine, untouched new chapter the moment we make a single error, eat the junk food, miss one day at the gym. That clean slate feels instantly spoiled.
Precisely. That single slip-up demolishes the mental clean slate that the FSE gave you. The internal monologue just instantly shifts to, I've broken the streak, I failed. That means I'm not the new, improved future self after all. I'm back to being my old self.
So that one error becomes proof that the resolution was a sham, and that leads to total abandonment of the goal.
Right. You haven't just failed for one day, you've failed the entire new identity.
That is a brutal psychological spiral. The mindset sees the setback as proof that the resolution was futile, instead of just a logistical bump in the road. So what's the pragmatic solution? How do we build failure tolerance into the system?
The solution is the never miss twice rule. It's a tactical element, and it's crucial for long-term adherence. This rule forces you to immediately forgive the first slip-up, which inoculates you against the crippling psychological effect of a single failure and protects the narrative of your new, capable self.
Explain the mechanics of that.
Never miss twice.
Why is one slip acceptable, but two is fail to the system?
One slip-up is acceptable because it maintains the belief that you are a successful person who had an exception day. Life will occasionally intervene. You get sick, there's an emergency, a business trip. That single anomaly is accounted for. It's categorized mentally as a lapse, a momentary break in the pattern, but not a change in your identity.
But the second missed day,
Mm.
that starts to change the fundamental relationship with the new behavior.
Yes, two slip-ups or two missed days in a row start to create the beginning of a new unwanted habit. You risk creating a new negative neural pathway that says, skipping this is easy and there's no consequence. You're reinforcing the old behavior's myelinated path.
So that's what transforms a lapse into a relapse.
Exactly. A relapse is a return to the old status quo. The difference between missing once and missing twice is the difference between an acceptable anomaly and the creation of a new, undesired habit.
So by forgiving the first slip-up and immediately re-engaging the next day, you prevent that catastrophic spiral of "I failed completely." You're building resilience directly into the system.
It's the highest form of self-compassion applied to goal achievement. Instead of seeing yourself as a complete failure, you see yourself as a successful system builder who just had to test the system's resilience. It maintains the integrity of the new self narrative.
And the key is that immediate reinforcement. You protect the clean slate by refusing to let the old self reclaim control for 2 days in a row.
The power of this is immense because it acknowledges the messy reality of human life while still demanding discipline. You get the benefit of the FSE, that initial burst, and then you immediately transition to a durable system that anticipates the inevitable failure points.
The research on habit formation confirms this, doesn't it? The successful people aren't the ones who never miss a beat.
Not at all. They're the ones who have a system for getting back on track immediately when they inevitably slip. The focus shifts from perfect adherence to rapid recovery.
This is a really powerful synthesis. The entire journey of sustained change, from the noisy hope of New Year's Eve to the quiet, effective determination of the days that follow. It's really a translation process.
It is.
It's moving from that grand, beautiful feeling of a macro aspiration to the messy yet powerful reality of micro-action. Small, repeatable, and forgiving daily practices.
And that is the synthesis of our deep dive. The psychological power of the fresh start is undeniable, but relying solely on that initial emotional burst is fundamentally setting yourself up for the January 17th crash. To truly honor that psychological power, you have to transition instantly into laying down the concrete plans, the implementation intentions that define the durable, low-friction path forward.
So the successful New Year isn't about the grand, fragile promise made at midnight. It's about the specifics of leaving the book on your pillow or laying out your gym clothes the night before. And it's certainly about accepting that you will mess up once and then immediately committing to not messing up twice. You're creating a structure that survived the eventual depletion of your willpower.
It's about making sure that the fresh start you leverage is a resilient one, supported by systems and environmental engineering, not dependent on fleeting emotional highs.
That is a fantastic framework for change, regardless of the calendar date. And speaking of when you're starting, that brings us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on after this deep dive.
We centered our entire discussion on New Year's Day because it's the ultimate shared temporal landmark. But if the core power of the fresh start effect comes from mentally partitioning our lives, creating that clean slate and decoupling from our past self, why must we wait for January 1st to roll around?
A very good question. If the research shows that temporal landmarks also include things like the first day of a month or your birthday, which you control completely. What other existing but maybe currently unutilized dates in your own life could you consciously leverage?
You don't need a massive societal ritual to grant yourself permission to reboot. Consider the completion of a major work project, or the changing of a season, the first day of spring, the anniversary of a personal milestone, or even just the first of next month. Could you consciously use one of those personal landmarks to trigger a similar, powerful fresh start? A tailored reboot for a specific goal, complete with implementation intentions, without waiting 11 months for the next New Year's Day.
That's where the true portable power of this research lies.
It is, in taking control of the psychological reboot button yourself whenever you need it.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We are jumping right into your curated stack of source material, all designed to give you that shortcut to being, well, really thoroughly well-informed. And today we are wrestling with a concept that it's both the most common and I think the most profound subject of human contemplation.
Time itself.
Time itself, yeah.
Yeah.
It's this intangible, just relentless protagonist in every single one of our life stories.
It's a really fascinating dive, and our sources today are, they're highly philosophical. They're drawing from ancient Greek thought, but also from modern physics and behavioral psychology.
A real mix.
A huge mix. Our mission really is to analyze this very human need for temporal renewal. Specifically, why do we use these rituals like the New Year to segment what is, fundamentally a continuous flow?
Right.
We really want to pull apart that vital distinction between measured time and meaningful time, what the ancient Greeks called chronos and kairos.
And this is about so much more than just making a few resolutions. What we want to do is deliver a powerful sort of aha moment, an insight about continuous renewal. This idea that, you don't actually need the calendar's permission to start fresh. This deep dive is going to uncover how our seemingly, I guess, mundane annual rituals are actually these profound acts of psychological self-defense.
Right, against the relentless ticking clock.
Exactly. We're going to unpack this human desire to tame the untamable. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. Let's start with the sheer scale of it. The first question the sources really force us to confront is elemental.
Okay.
Why are we, as a species, globally, so compelled to chop the continuous flow of reality into these neat, digestible, predictable segments?
Seconds, minutes, days.
Years. Every single culture across every epoch has devised some method of segmentation. What is it that drives this universal compulsion?
It's that segmentation that gives us the structure, right? But the reason for it,
Right.
that seems to speak to a really fundamental psychological anxiety. I mean, think about time as a raw, untouched phenomenon. It's just this infinite, unceasing flow.
Right. No beginning, no end, no pause button.
Exactly. No pause button. And the moment you really, truly step back and contemplate that, the sheer linearity of it all becomes deeply unsettling.
The sources paint a very stark picture of that confrontation. From a purely psychological view, this constant forward-moving flow of time is essentially a conveyor belt to our own mortality.
That's a powerful phrase.
It is. It's a constant underlying reminder that our existence is finite and that change is inevitable. And that recognition generates this profound level of cognitive stress that, the human mind just can't sustain indefinitely.
Not without some kind of coping mechanism.
Precisely. And that's where the calendar comes in.
So the calendar is born. And it's not just a scheduling device. It's not just for remembering appointments.
Yeah, not at all.
It's an essential psychological buffer. It's a tool for, mental survival. We're engaging in an act that the source material calls domesticating time.
I love that phrase, domesticating time.
Yeah. We're taking this overwhelming, massive, chaotic force, what some philosophers call the predator, and we're trying to turn it into a manageable, predictable, patterned rhythm. We're trying to impose order onto chaos.
And we do that primarily by emphasizing cyclical structures. I mean, time itself might be linear and directional, but our existence, our world, is fundamentally cyclical.
You mean like the rotation of the Earth, the
seasons, the lunar cycles, yeah. And by aligning our calendar with these natural repeating patterns, the return of spring, the repetition of a year, we create this powerful illusion of renewal and control.
It's kind of a genius piece of collective self-deception, isn't it?
It really is.
If the seasons can come back around and the sun always rises again after the longest night, then maybe I can renew and reset as well.
We introduce predictability into what is, at its deepest level, an entirely unpredictable and irreversible process of existence.
And this need for cycles explains why humanity has poured so much effort for millennia into just aligning these arbitrary systems. I mean, think about the effort it took just to establish calendars in the first place.
Oh, it's immense. The sources point out the historical complexity. We're constantly debating solar versus lunar calendars and the
Mhm.
difficulty of synchronizing them. And that just highlights how arbitrary it all is.
That's a crucial point about the arbitrariness that I think we miss.
Yeah.
Our current system, the Gregorian calendar, which underpins this whole global New Year ritual,
Yeah.
it's a relatively recent and entirely human invention. It was designed to fix errors in the old Julian calendar,
Right. And in the 16th century, countries literally had to skip days. They just removed 10 days from the clock to get the measurement of the year to align properly with the solar reality.
which is just wild to think about.
It is. When that switch happened, you had entire populations agree, through sheer institutional force, that October 4th would immediately be followed by October 15th.
And those 10 days?
They just ceased to exist for bureaucratic purposes. And that is the ultimate evidence of our ability to impose structure on chaos through a shared collective story.
We could just decide which segments matter and which ones we
Yeah,
just delete.
exactly.
And so New Year's Day becomes the most powerful, the most globalized expression of this domesticated time. It's the one annual milestone where we all collectively agree to just step off that conveyor belt for a moment.
Yeah, a universal pause.
It allows for this massive pause to look back at the 365 days that were just consumed by time, by chronos, and more importantly, to look forward with a fresh, powerful sense of agency.
That feeling of a clean slate.
That's the psychological fuel we crave.
The power of that collective experience is stunning, especially when you contrast it with the cold scientific reality of time.
Okay, let's get into that.
The sources bring up the physics of the now and how notoriously slippery that concept actually is. We're taught to think of time as this universal external metronome.
A clock on the wall of the universe.
Right. But modern physics shows us there is no universal tick-tock of a cosmic clock.
And that's the detail that really needs careful attention. Our perception is that we all share the same flowing present moment, that we're all experiencing now at the same time.
Exactly.
But the sources are reminding us that this shared flowing present is primarily a construction of our own consciousness. It's not an intrinsic feature of the universe.
And if we dig into that a little, the sources touch on Einsteinian relativity. Time is inherently relative to the observer's motion and position.
Okay, so what does that mean in simple terms?
It means for you and me to agree on what now even means, we have to assume we're in the same frame of reference, basically standing still relative to each other. But if you take two people moving relative to each other,
Like one on Earth and one in a super fast rocket.
perfect example, they will fundamentally disagree on whether two distant events happen simultaneously. Their nows are literally different.
So if the concept of simultaneity depends on the observer, then the idea of a universal cosmic clock ticking down to midnight everywhere at the same time.
It's conceptually flawed. Precisely. The New Year countdown is this magnificent demonstration of the profoundly human construct of time.
It's a global consensus.
It's a monumental act of collective will to manufacture a shared, significant now that literally has no real basis in the fabric of space-time.
Wow.
We just decide that this arbitrary second, as measured by our standardized Earth clocks, marks a momentous transition.
It really is the ultimate example of imposing structure on chaos. It proves that the reality we navigate, the deadlines we stress about, the cycles we feel constrained by, they're all profoundly influenced by the stories and conventions we all just agree to follow.
Right. We use that collective narrative to carve out these manageable milestones that satisfy our deep psychological need for control and for the promise of renewal.
But to really use the energy that moment generates,
Mhm.
we have to move beyond just counting the seconds and days.
That's the key. We have to transition from the quantitative view of time to the qualitative,
Yeah.
which brings us directly to the dual nature of temporal perception.
The most critical distinction in our source material.
Chronos and Kairos.
This dualism is where all the power lies. Most of our daily lives, I think, are spent trapped inside that first concept, chronos.
Oh, absolutely.
We're just constantly measuring, calculating, worrying about how much time we have left or how quickly it's all running out.
Chronos is the dominant everyday experience of time, and it's the primary source of so much modern temporal anxiety. It's just raw, measured duration.
So let's define chronos really thoroughly for a second. It's sequential, it's quantitative, And above all, it is relentless.
Mhm.
It's the ticking of the clock,
Hmm.
the odometer of life that ages us and rushes us. It
Yeah.
just represents the sheer duration, the number of minutes, the number of days, the years. The pressure of Chronos is just relentless in our world.
Absolutely. The sources spend a lot of time detailing how Kronos creates pressure, not just personally, but societally and economically.
You mean like deadlines?
Deadlines, quarterly reports, the constant demand for productivity optimization. The entire capitalist infrastructure is built on the rigorous quantitative measurement of Chronos.
It's the machine of time.
It's the machine of time just moving forward, totally impartial and uncaring about the content of the moments it's consuming.
So if New Year's Eve, on the surface, is just the completion of 365 days, a purely quantitative measure of Chronos, then what we're trying to do at midnight is introduce something else.
We're trying to introduce Kairos, the qualitative time.
Kairos is the beautiful counterpoint.
It is. It's not about duration at all. It's about content, meaning opportunity. It's the opportune moment, the right moment for action or for insight.
And the sources highlight that this concept, Kairos, it originates in ancient Greek thought, not just as time, but in things like rhetoric and archery.
Yes, that context is absolutely vital. In ancient rhetoric, Kairos was that perfect, brief window in a speech where you introduce your punchiest argument for maximum effect.
The perfect timing.
The perfect timing. And in archery, it was that brief moment when the target was perfectly aligned, allowing the arrow to fly true. It's not just time, it's the opening.
An opening. A window of opportunity.
Exactly. It's a window that opens, often unexpectedly, or that we can seize intentionally if we're aware. It could be that sudden moment of epiphany.
Right.
You know, the concept that finally clicks into place after hours of work. And that single second of understanding, it just transcends all the chronos you spent struggling.
Or it could be that specific moment in a personal relationship where, vulnerability is met with acceptance and it creates this profound shift. The duration of the hug might be 10 seconds of Chronos, but the meaning packed into that instant.
Is immense. That's Kairos.
That's Kairos. So the two are intrinsically linked. You need the stream of Chronos to provide the raw material, but Kairos is the valuable, meaningful thing you pull out of that stream.
And this brings us right back to the New Year ritual. The sources strongly suggest that the profound human purpose of this whole ritual is a kind of temporal act of alchemy. The attempt to transform arbitrary, measured chronos into meaningful, opportune kairos.
So we take this totally arbitrary, predetermined point in the ceaseless march of measured time, that tick from 11:59 p.m. to 12:00 a.m., and we collectively decide to imbue it with immense psychological significance.
We declare it the ultimate kairos moment.
The opportune time for sweeping change, for new beginnings. We're basically using the calendar to grant ourselves permission to overhaul our entire lives.
It's incredibly ambitious, yes. And it's powerful for generating motivation, but the sources also caution that by making this single moment the repository for all of our hopes, we're kind of setting ourselves up for a very specific kind of failure.
A failure rooted in anxiety.
Exactly.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The exploration of what the sources call kairos anxiety. By declaring a singular calendar-driven moment as the perfect time for renewal, we create this crushing pressure. If the transition to January 1st is the only opportune moment, then it absolutely has to be perfect.
Yeah.
This is a psychological pitfall of, you could call it temporal perfectionism. The focus shifts completely away from the messy, incremental process of change, and it focuses instead on the immaculate perfection of the start.
So you have to launch the new habit flawlessly.
Right. Because the stakes feel incredibly high.
Sure.
If you fail to go for that jog on January 1st, the whole resolution already feels dead because the optimal kairos, that perfect moment, has passed.
And that paralysis, that inability to start because the start itself has to be perfect, that's a direct manifestation of kairos anxiety.
We see it all the time. People delaying big projects or habits until a clean starting point.
A new month, a birthday.
The new year. And when the pressure of that manufactured kairos moment finally hits, they falter. The sources connect this hyperpressurization directly to the staggering failure rates of New Year's resolutions.
It makes so much sense when you frame it like that.
Think about the psychological contrast. If you view change as something that can happen at any time, the stakes of a single failure are low.
You just adjust and continue.
Right. But if you view the new year as your one shot to change, then the failure of January 1st implies the entire year's potential is already compromised.
Which leads to that inevitable letdown that follows the magic. The confetti settles, the champagne is flat, and then Chronos just reasserts itself, often with a depressing vengeance.
January 2nd arrives. You still have the same routines, the same psychological challenges, the same student loan payment, the same messy desk.
The same fundamental obstacles you faced 2 days ago.
Right. The profound magic of that Kairos transition just dissipates. Because the underlying measurable structure of your reality hasn't changed at all. The calendar gave you permission to feel different, but it didn't give you the mechanisms to be different.
And we often feel let down not by our own commitment, but by time itself. We expected the arbitrary shift in the calendar to grant us this magical instant transformation.
Instead of just marking a boundary.
Right. The source material is very clear. Relying on this single annual shift just sets us up for an emotional crash because we've confused the marker of time, chronos, with the content of time, kairos.
And that crash is a result of treating Kairos as this temporary, externally granted permission slip, something the clock gives us, rather than an internally generated awareness, something we have to seize for ourselves.
So the real challenge becomes, how do we harness that motivational energy that the collective ritual creates, but without succumbing to the anxiety and the crushing letdown that follows when sequential time just goes back to normal?
And that question leads us directly to the core philosophical conclusion of all this material.
The path to continuous renewal.
Yes. If we acknowledge that relying on a single annual milestone is inherently psychologically taxing, then we have to engage a healthier, more enlightened approach to time management and personal change.
The enlightened approach, as it's drawn from the source philosophy, is a fundamental paradigm shift.
It is. It suggests we should stop placing the entire weight of our transformation on a single annual Kairos moment.
So what's the goal then?
The goal is to cultivate an awareness of the potential for Kairos, for meaning, for opportunity, for the right moment within the relentlessly flowing everyday chronos.
Okay, so if we connect this to the bigger picture, this means we have to dismantle the idea that significance is confined to holidays or milestones or big external events.
Exactly.
The real task is to find the potential for deep significance and meaningful action in, an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, not just on the 1st of January.
It's about being present enough to recognize the opportunity when it arises, even if the calendar date is totally mundane.
And the source material provides some rich historical context for this, noting that in many ancient pre-industrial societies, the concept of a fresh start was often tied to smaller, more frequent cycles.
Like the Sabbath.
The Sabbath, the weekly market, the lunar phases. These smaller cycles naturally distributed the pressure of renewal. It's our modern, highly centralized calendar that imposes this monumental annual expectation on us.
So we need to reclaim that distribution.
We do. And that involves demythologizing the new year as the only valid time for significant change. By doing that, we are essentially democratizing the fresh start.
I like that, democratizing the fresh start.
We take the power away from the institutionalized calendar, and we put it back firmly in the hands of the individual, moment by moment.
This democratization recognizes that every single sunrise, every Monday morning, the start of every new task, or even just the next breath you take after a lapse in concentration.
That's a micro opportunity for renewal.
Exactly. It transforms the whole process of change from an annual festival of intense effort into a daily low-stakes practice of course correction.
And you can feel the psychological impact of that lower stakes approach. If you miss a goal or you lapse in a habit on a Thursday.
The next opportunity is Friday morning.
Right. It's not 360 days away.
Right.
And that proximity, it reduces the pressure, making failure feel less catastrophic and recovery far more immediate and less emotionally costly.
You don't need external validation or some calendar gate to open for you.
You just need the decision to start again.
And this shift fundamentally reframes our entire relationship with time itself. We stop being passive observers.
Just waiting for the calendar to grant us permission to change.
And instead, we transition to active and continuous engagement with the temporal flow. The power to begin anew is inherent in every single instant, and we exercise that power through intentional awareness.
So how does that active engagement actually manifest in real life? What does it look like?
Well, it requires a kind of mindfulness, a readiness. The passive observer sees the clock ticking down and feels fear or anxiety.
Right, rush.
The actively engaged person sees the clock ticking and is constantly scanning the landscape for emergent kairos, the opportune moment to intervene, to speak, to listen, or just to start.
The contrast between those two mindsets is profound.
It is. The passive observer feels rushed and victimized by Chronos, always anxiously anticipating the next big Kairos event.
But the active individual is constantly looking to manufacture their own kairos moments, capitalizing on them, regardless of what the date is.
They're living deliberately in time rather than merely marking its passage as a prerequisite for change.
This changes the entire metaphor of our life journey, which I think is so crucial for actually retaining this stuff.
Wow.
Instead of seeing time as a series of gates to pass through, where you have to wait for the next gate, a new year, a birthday, a new job to open before you're allowed to progress.
We should see it differently.
We have to start seeing time as an open field of possibility.
An open field. I like that. Exploring that open field requires a very different set of tools than just waiting at a locked gate.
Yeah, what does it require?
It requires adaptability, resilience, and the willingness to start from wherever you happen to be standing rather than insisting on starting from the perfect designated spot.
So if you realize you want to learn a new skill at, say, 3:17 p.m. on a random Tuesday,
The field is open. You don't need to delay that decision until the start of next week.
and this deliberate cultivation of continuous renewal, it leads to a far healthier, more sustainable outcome.
Absolutely. By distributing the psychological weight of transformation and expectation across the entire year, across all those small, seemingly insignificant moments, we dramatically increase the chances of meaningful, lasting change.
The sources suggest that sustained success comes from the cumulative effect of small, frequent renewals.
Not from the high-pressure burst of annual hope. We develop a healthier, less anxious, and ultimately more profound relationship with time itself.
We stop fearing the relentless march of Chronos.
Because we recognize that within every single second, the potential for Kairos is waiting to be seized. We learn to embrace the flow, to live in time, not just mark its relentless milestones and feel rushed by them.
It is the ultimate reclamation of agency. It's taking ownership of your own temporal journey away from the arbitrary measurements that civilization has imposed on us.
We move from being managed by time to becoming the active managers of our own moments.
So if we pull back from all the detail, the central argument is really clear. The high-stakes pressure you might be feeling around annual or even monthly milestones is entirely self-imposed.
It is. It's a byproduct of our culture prioritizing Chronos measurement over Kairos meaning.
And you possess the inherent power of renewal, and it's built into your every single day.
The calendar still serves a purpose, of course. It can be a powerful landmark for collective reflection. It's unifying, and it's useful to pause together and assess the past 365 days.
Yep.
But that structure doesn't need to bear the entire crushing weight of all your hopes and dreams for personal and professional transformation.
So if you are out there waiting for the perfect time to begin a crucial change, the source material is arguing that you fundamentally missed the point of Kairos.
That perfect time is available right now.
The difference is between passively waiting for some monumental gate to open in the distance
Versus actively and immediately exploring the open field that's all around you.
The wisdom here lies not in celebrating the big, arbitrary milestones, but in finding the significance and the opportunity of the Kairos, in all the small, mundane moments in between the tick-tock of Chronos.
Exactly.
And that profound shift leads us to our final thought for you to ponder as you navigate your own flow of Chronos and seek out your own Kairos. If every moment is truly a chance to start fresh, a micro opportunity for renewal, how does your definition of procrastination change?
Ooh, that's a good one.
If the power to begin is inherent in this very second, right now, what happens when you knowingly choose to delay that beginning?
It transforms delay from just a practical lapse into a philosophical choice.
A philosophical choice to deny yourself the immediate possibility of renewal.
A provocative question to end on. It really encourages continuous action and awareness. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the philosophy of temporal perception.
We hope your path through the open field is insightful, intentional, and endlessly profound.